All right, so this was a great story. Not great in terms of the how it augurs for the sport, but great in terms of very well reported. Last weekend, John Chirwa, who was a special contributor for the Los Angeles Times, wrote a story called "Inside California Horse Racing's Complex Problems That Could Hurt the Sport Nationwide," and it's largely about Santa Anita. And we've discussed the problems that Santa Anita is facing. First Racing supposedly is hiring Keith Brackpool to explore at least selling Santa Anita and Gulfstream. Supposedly, the price tags that they have floated out there have been rejected as too high at the current moment, and partially because there's a racetrack there that you have to run. So that's a little bit of an issue. But first of all, I want to just shout out John Chirwa because, like. This used to be in every single paper across the country. You had a racing correspondent, and they would break these stories. Like Bill Finley was that guy for a while before he went on to the TDN. Obviously, he does a great job there, but it's different having it as a part of like the newspaper in that town. John Chirwa is still that guy in LA and for the LA Times. So I'm so glad that he's reporting on this stuff and at least bringing it to people's attention, because that's kind of the first thing you have to do to try to affect change. He's obviously got a passion for the game. This is the story about kind of the way that Santa Anita is part of the community and the way it's struggling because it doesn't have the alternative gaming revenue. And then it broadens out to also discuss how, contraction for the sport is great as long as it's not your track that's closing. And I recommend reading it. We'll pop it up on the screen. And it's a really good summary and synopsis of kind of the place that racing is in right now, the precarious spot that it's in. John, I'm curious to hear your thoughts, but the thing that I took away from it, and this is maybe just me and my New York centric kind of ethos and viewpoint that I have, it made me a lot more grateful that they're redoing Belmont Park. When they first said they were knocking down Belmont Park and rebuilding it, I was a little pissed off because I love the old Belmont Park, and I don't think that the new one really resembles the old one. It doesn't seem to carry on a lot of the tradition of the Belmont Park. But then I take a step back and I read stories like this, and like, how lucky are we in New York that the state is investing $450 million into rebuilding and making it a state-of-the-art modernized facility to hopefully bring new people to the track. Like it just could be so much worse, that it just made me so much more excited about the new Belmont and the fact that there are still places in America where the state is investing in racing. We're seeing that in Maryland as well. We've seen it obviously in Kentucky, in Arkansas. So there are places where racing does seem to at least be part of the future plans. But man, California is in a really, really tough spot, and I hate it. I hate it because of how Santa Anita is steeped in tradition. It's one of the most, I would say one of the most significant sporting venues in all of America. It's got a great community around it, a great community of horsemen. It's been so important to the fabric of California. I just hate that it's in this position and that they just don't know what tomorrow looks like.
Yeah, and I think it's unfortunately it's nothing new, Joe. I think what is new is the fact that that Brackpool announced, we're open for business. Like, if you want to, in the sense of we're accepting offers, we're accepting bids, we're going to exhaust every opportunity to see if we can sell this asset, and that's really what they're looking at, is that it's an asset. I think it was telling, Joe, that in the LA Times article that John reached out to like 4 or 5 different representatives within the Stronach Group and within First, and could not get anybody willing to be quoted in the article. They did release a statement. Brackpool released a statement saying racing in California is facing challenging economic circumstances. This is not an easy problem to solve. We are continuously thinking about the solutions and in discussion with various stakeholders about the best way forward. So, look, I give him credit for coming out and saying, yeah, you know what, we're entertaining all and every offer that's out there, and we'll see if we can find a match to sell. He's not saying that we're selling it to a group that's automatically going to redevelop it into something else. But it again shows the general public, just like with Gulfstream, shows the general public that like they're not interested in being in the racing business first. They're interested in helping their own bottom line. And look, they were entrepreneurs. They bought the property. They felt like it was at a discount. They've developed it. They've continued to move to move forward in racing, and now it's worth that much more years later, either through their own efforts or just through time. But they're no friends of racing. They've shown time and time again that their interests are lie in lining their own pockets first, and then everything else kind of second. And we've had long conversations with Michelle Yu, who's boots on the ground out there, who she and her husband train horses there, own horses there, and campaign horses all up and down the California circuit, and it's not a good situation. And I think that if you had to say, is California racing going to be of our fabric, 2, 3, 4 years from now? I don't think so, Joe. And that's a shame on a lot of levels, and it hurts the industry overall. It impacts the industry, on so many levels, whether it's racing, graded stake horses, potential horses, to become as stallions, all those things. But this isn't anything new. I mean, they've had a hard time. California's had a hard time recruiting horses to come out there and recruiting people to send their horses out there, literally for at least a decade, if not more so.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, John Sherwood did another article, and there's some in this article about it, about the potential for HHR machines. And it's a very, very tough haul in California because the Native American tribes have such a monopoly on the parimutuel race wagering outside of the racetracks. But that's been such a boon for Kentucky racing. And there's a discussion to be had about the casinos subsidizing the racetracks and whether or not that's really just, and that's really in support of the game long term. Where we just become and as they put it in the article, a sideshow,
right?
Where they have to have a certain amount of races in order to have the gaming license. And we're seeing in Florida, the minute they're able to split those two, they have no use for us. Mm-hmm. I think with HHR, at least it's tangentially, nominally connected to racing. So you at least have some possibility of crossover betting. I just don't know, the slot players aren't going to go over to the racetrack and learn how to read a racing form. Though no. HHR machines, at least you have a race, you have the general concept of a race that maybe live racing could be in that ballpark for some people, but and at least it's actually connected to the sport, where you can make a stronger argument that, hey, we got the races here, we got this racing, aligned game right here. This is a natural marriage, and it helps support both enterprises. And that. And there's another thing in the story about Kentucky and how well Kentucky is doing because of HHR, and whether or not Kentucky should be helping to subsidize some other states that are struggling. And there's two sides to it, because the people in Kentucky, they worked really hard to get that through the legislature. They organized and they got that passed, and they're seeing the benefits of it. So they understandably are probably sitting there what the hell are the other legislators doing in these other states that they can't do it there?
Right.
By the same token, Kentucky benefits from the popularity of racing as a whole across the country. Kentucky and Keeneland are not going to have the same level of economic impact if you don't have people from California or Florida or these other states buying horses at the sales, sending mares to be bred in Kentucky. So if these states fall by the wayside, Kentucky's going to suffer too. Mm-hmm. So I think that's another really interesting part of this conversation, and what kind of responsibility Kentucky, the home of horse racing, has to the sport in the rest of the country.
Well, I think you bring up a very good point, Joe. It's microeconomics versus macroeconomics, in my estimation. It's, how do we help the microeconomic viability of Santa Anita, and how does that tumble and have a domino effect on the macro level of our industry if they do fail, or if there isn't racing in California. And I can see the argument on both sides. We're such a boutique industry that unless we grow the overall pie, it's not going to matter that much. I think that the HHR machines have grown the pie. But I can remember, going to Delaware Park 30 years ago with my parents and walking through the grandstand and asking people how to get to the paddock. And this was like a year after they had gotten their slot machines, and they didn't know what paddock meant. They were like, what are you talking? There's horses here? Like, they had no idea that there were even racing there. So I don't know if necessarily that's going to drive, eyeballs to the track if we have more, horse related themed gambling machines. To me, it's like if you walk into a casino and you look and you see like there's the Wheel of Fortune slot machines. I don't know if people are going home saying, I think I'm going to watch Pat Sajak tonight. But the owners of Wheel of Fortune, the game, get a certain percentage of the handle of that. So is it unique enough, or are the HHR machines unique enough where they would continue to stay ahead of all of the Wheel of Fortune based shows, Jeopardy based slot machines, the Hooters slot machine. I don't know. I mean, I think at some point in time people are going to be like, well, I want to see those new machines because they're brighter and fancier and stimulate my mind more, more so than the horse racing does. We basically need to have a better product overall, and I think Jon Stewart on our show last week really opened my eyes with some of the suggestions that he had with regard to how do we make, how do we do it where either we have cross sport betting, or if that's not available, if that's not, feasible because of laws and situations like that, logistics, then why don't we offer easier gambling options within our own sport where, a jockey, you can bet on Pratt over under 3.5 wins today. Or, our horse is going to, our gray horse is going to win 2 out of the 9 race, whatever it is. You got to dumb it down, to make people be interested in it, because it's really hard to explain how to bet, a superfecta, or how to bet a pick 5 or what it costs. Unfortunately, you want to make it as easy as possible for people to spend their money, and the options that we have, parimutuel options that we have right now that are out there, aren't interesting. It's not an interesting enough menu for people to dive into.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I agree with that. That more exotic wagers is really the answer. I think fixed odds can definitely help, but I think I think another bigger problem is that people's attention spans are getting shorter and shorter.
Right,
and racing is a labor intensive, mind intensive game where it's very hard to just pick it up and just do it. Like, it's something that takes a lot of trial and error. Fuck, I'm still trying all the trial and error. Sorry, I keep swearing when I'm not supposed to. The FCC came and called and said I can't swear anymore. But no, and also it's just such a long day. 10 races, it takes 5 hours.
Right.
And there's too much time between races, especially with sports betting now and live betting, there's action around you nonstop. And whether or not that's good for people as a whole, I don't know that that's necessarily the case, but it's definitely good for business.
Right.
And I don't think jockey over unders is gonna move the needle. I think that because then those people are still gonna have to be there waiting for these races to be run over the course of several hours. And I think that's a big part of the problem, is that it's a big ask to get people to sit and watch races for 4 or 5 hours when they could walk over and pull the slot machine 20 times in 5 minutes, or go bet on a sports game and have 5,000 things to bet on within 5-10 minutes. I think that's the bigger issue.
But wouldn't it also be, I mean, if you're betting a multiple game parlay in football, and you pick games on Sunday at 1, Sunday at 4, and the Monday night game, you're in essence waiting and watching 12 hours of football before you know if you've made it or not. You don't have to physically be there and physically be monitoring it all the time, but if you can do it at the luxury of your home, in the palm of your hand, and you can bet on multiple races and then go do what you're going to do for the day, or go bet on football or basketball, whatever you want to do. I mean, there's a time constraint on everybody, but I think that the day and age of people going to the racetrack and spending 5 hours of their day to bet on 9 races. I think that's behind us. Just like, golf is suffering right now in popularity because people don't want to spend 5 or 6 hours of their day playing golf and waiting for the knuckleheads that are the foursome in front of you to hole out before you can tee off. And it's just not a fun day anymore in comparison to all the other options that are out there. So I think we have to get with the times and provide a menu of options for our customers. That's one thing that Duncan Taylor from TaylorMade has said to me. If you said to me once, he said it to me 1,000 times. We need to know what our customers want. We can't keep saying, okay, have an ice cream stand and say, what would you like? Well, I want cherry ripple. Well, we only have vanilla. Okay, well then I'll have mint chocolate chip. Well, no, we only have vanilla. And basically say, if you want ice cream, it's vanilla. And expect for our customers to continue to come back and be like, this is the best mediocre vanilla ice cream I've ever had.
I will say the vanilla ice cream you sent me was not mediocre.
Well, that's different. That was top of the line, and that was only because you had your wisdom teeth pulled.
That was delicious.
That's why it was such a treat.
Yeah, I gotta shout out my co-pilot Jon Green, who sent me ice cream after my wisdom tooth removal. That was very, very, very sweet of you. Yeah, John puts on this gruff exterior. He's always so sarcastic and he's a softie at heart, and I appreciate you, brother.
That was from the whole team, by the way. That was
it said your name on it.
Patty and Julia and everything like that. Well, I think they were sitting back just in case it wasn't good. They were like, we'll let Green go to the front of the line in case it's not any good. I think Patty wanted to send you like jimmies and sprinkles and stuff like that, and Julia was just going to send you booze because that's her answer to everything.
All good answers. All good answers.